finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Good evening, professional colleagues. Good evening, friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Our students, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you to another episode of ICAN on Air. This day, Tuesday, the 25th day of the month of October in the year 2022. I want to sincerely appreciate all our viewers who have been part of this program, learning, unlearning, and upskilling their ideas day by day with a topical topic and season facilitator that have been doing justice to our topic. We appreciate you, and we know that you've been the preacher of the gospel to make sure that others are brought on the net. Today, I've come with a topic on risk management. Very fundamental. And to do justice to this is no other person than Mr. Victor Onyepa, FCA, who is a partner in tax regulatory and in tax regulatory and people service practice of the KPMG in Nigeria. It was until recently the chief operating officer of KPMG in Nigeria and doubled as the risk management partner for several years. Before assuming those positions, he was the partner and head of tax, regulatory, and people services practice and served as the head of energy and natural resources line of the business for Nigerian firm. He has 32 years experience in providing tax, regulatory advisory, compliance services across various sectors of the Nigerian economy, but particular focus on ENR sector. He left the firm as a partner to join Shell Group in 2002. He served as a lead tax advisory to the commercial team for Shell Expo in UK. He was a tax manager overseeing tax affairs for Shell Company in Nigeria. Thereafter, he was the business finance manager before joining the firm in 2006. A first-class bachelor degree in chemistry from the University of Benin, an alumnus of the Lagos Business School, and has attended several management training programs, both local and offshore, including Harvard Business School. Victor is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, your institute, and also a fellow of Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, as well as an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, United Kingdom. Sincerely speaking, our guest is well loaded, very vast, ready to impact knowledge into us. The only thing you'll be doing me this evening is to check through. If your friend does not connect to this program, quickly dial the number, asking that ICAN on Air is live and we are ready to impact the knowledge. Let me quickly go on a very short commercial break. knowing fully well that this platform is out there to promote your goods and services. As I come back, I'll come in with a guest and we'll hit the ground running. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back, and it is my great pleasure to welcome our guest for today, Mr. Victor Onyekpa, FCA. Mr. Victor Onyekpa, good evening and welcome to ICAN on Air.
Good evening, Sheson, and thanks for having me.
Great pleasure to have you. We will be doing justice to risk management, considering your wealth of experience in this particular field. Let me start this way by asking, risk management is a phrase whose relevance cut across all facets of human endeavor. We would like to start with the basics so that the global audience will be able to have the opportunity of learning and sharing from your wealth of experience based on the CV I just read. Let me start with this by asking, sir, what is risk?
Thank you, Sheson. Let me paint a scenario. Your friend has invited you for an event in Ibadan, and you have to drive from Lagos to Ibadan. Of course, on the way going to Ibadan, you're going to see bumps, you're going to see potholes, you're going to see, curves, you're going to see real craters. You have to navigate through all of that to be able to get to Ibadan to attend your friend's show. So risk, in very simple language, are those bumps, those potholes, those craters, those twists and turns on the way as you go from Lagos to Ibadan. So if I bring that back to the business world, you can describe a risk as anything that can stop a business from achieving its full potential. And in fact, some risks can potentially kill a business.
That is a very simplified way. Even for someone that did not visit a school, you should be able to pick bumps on the road. Very simple way to define a risk. Well, let me proceed further. Considering your experience, sir, can you run us through the types of risk that are out there in the business world?
So there are so many types of risks that are out there, and to a very large extent, the ones that will have relevance will depend on the particular industry or sector that you operate in. So if I take our profession, the accounting profession, you'll agree that the risks that we'll face in that profession will be different from what, for instance, somebody in oil and gas, will consider his or her top risks. By staying, close home, the kinds of risks you're going to have with, risks like talent risk, especially with what's happening now with young people leaving Nigeria and going to work and live abroad. So talent risk for our business is a major risk right now.
The Japa syndrome.
The Japa syndrome, thank you very much. The risk of quality that the quality of work that you do, meets your client's expectation, is a very important risk. You have financial risk. You have risks around information protection. You have cyber risk, risk of somebody, hijacking, as you were, your IT system and being able to do harm to the business through that. You have liquidity risks. And of course, you have risks like regulatory risks. And you have risks like health, safety, and environment, etc. So the world of risk is really a very broad and wide one.
Very broad and very wide one. Is a function of the segment or the sector that you belong to. And I think I'm just hearing the first one you mentioned, maybe because of uh, that is the trending thing now, the talent risk. All through my time, I've never come about. Adding that to my vocabulary. Various type of risk, but has to do with the one that is peculiar to your sector. Let me take this that is there any relationship between risk and security based on your experience?
I think you have to see them as perhaps the two ends of a spectrum.
Okay.
Obviously, if you are unaware of the risks that surround what you do as an individual, as a business, you will feel yourself to be very secure, right?
Hmm.
So security is at one end of it, and risk, as it were, will be at the other end of it. So the better you manage your risks, the more secure you will be as an individual or a business. So that is how I would like to relate risk and security. They are, in a sense, at the two ends of the spectrum.
Hmm.
The more risks that challenge you in your business or as an individual, the less secure you are. And then the better you manage those risks, the more secure you can also become, as a business, especially.
So risk and security. The better you're able to manage this risk, the better your security. And if you let your guards down, then you are prone to something unplanned for. Uh,
Indeed.
Let me say that our viewers are connected globally. I can see people from Oyo State, from Lagos here, from the east, from the west. I've seen from Akoko, I've seen from Gombe. You are all welcome. And I'm on with Mr. Victor Oyempa, who is doing justice to risk management. So I will encourage you to bring in your questions so that we can treat them as we proceed in the question. Mr. Oyempa, I want to go this way. In spiritualism, they will say sin is sin, meaning that there is nothing like big sin and there is nothing like small sin. What we call take it to risk, is there anything like big risk or small risk, or risk is simply risk, just like they will tell us in the spiritualism that sin is sin?
Well, luckily for us, there is something like a big risk and
Mm-hmm.
small risk. So it's not a question of all risks being the same. And if
Okay.
you look at how you, in a sense, dimension a risk, it could be one that you consider to be a remote kind of risk. And now I'm looking at the likelihood of the risk occurring, and there are two parameters that we use in evaluating risk. The first parameter is the impact the risk will have on you or on the business if it was to happen. And the second will be the likelihood of that particular risk materializing. And so if I stay with the likelihood of a risk materializing, it can be remote, in which case you consider the likelihood of it as very, very remote, very, very low. It could be low, it could be medium, and it could be high. And similarly, in terms of the impact the risk will have on your business, it could be a very low risk, and it could be a very low impact, and it could be a risk that will be catastrophic to your business. So a risk that is, in terms of impact, low, and in terms of likelihood of occurrence, also low, you can ignore it.
Hmm.
But a risk that the impact is catastrophic, and it's likely to occur is a risk that should keep a business awake at night. So yes, there's a difference between a very high risk and a low risk in the risk world.
So there are differences. It's not like the spiritualism that we're trying to make comparison with. So
No,
there
no,
is
no.
big risk and there
This
is
is
small risk.
yeah, this is very
Which
practical, not spiritual at all, Session.
is not spiritual, very practical about it. And as we proceed, let me encourage again that our viewers who are connected all the way from Abuja, Benin, Makodi, Akoko, Enugu, Okene, Ibadan, Lagos, even from the diaspora are out there to bring to bear their questions that you will be able to do justice to. As we coast further, let me ask, based on the topic, what is risk management? And is risk management the same as risk control?
Okay, let me start with the second question, which is whether risk management and risk control are the same. And the answer is no. Risk control is a subset of risk management.
Okay.
Having said that, let's then answer the question, what is risk management? In very simple terms, risk management is a practice that seeks to first identify, secondly, evaluate, third, track, and fourth, mitigate against identified risks. So the first aspect of risk management is identifying the risks, then evaluating them or assessing them, tracking them, and then putting mitigating steps in place to enable you, in a sense, to carry on as a business without those risks bringing you down as a business.
So the highlight of risk management speaks to identifying the risk, evaluating the risk, tracking the risk, and definitely puts some measure to mitigate the risk. Very simple way to digest risk management. And I think from your word, you said the risk control is not the same with risk management, but a subset of risk management. I await the question of our viewers as we do justice to risk management with Mr. Victor Oyempa, FCA, who has been treating this topic the way it should be. Let me proceed further, sir. Why is risk management important? And what are the principles involved?
Risk management is important because it enables you to, in a sense, remove those things that can actually bring an organization to its knees. In fact, if I quote the one-time CEO of Goldman Sachs, a gentleman called Cohn, he said, if you don't have risk management in place as a business, it doesn't matter what business you are in, it's a risky business. So risk management is are those steps you're going to take as a business to ensure that your business is able to run as planned and to achieve its strategies, its objectives, etc.
You must be able to have that fundamental. I'm proceeding with this after having known the importance of risk management. Uh, can you tell us the principle that is involved in risk management?
Okay, so like I mentioned, you have to go through those steps of identifying the risk, because if you don't know the risk, you can't manage it, right? So being able to identify all the risks that are likely to affect your business is a very critical first step. The second, obviously, is to analyze the risk, because like I pointed out, there are some risks that their impact on the business would be not significant. And then there are those that the impact can be catastrophic. So you need to be able to evaluate all the risks
Evaluate.
and be able to say, here are the big ones that we really need to focus our attention on. And that is the next step, which is prioritizing the risks. So after you've identified all the risks, you've analyzed all of them, you then prioritize. So you're going to have your top risks and you're going to have the other risks. And clearly from a resource allocation point of view, what you want to do is to put as much of your resource as possible in dealing with those your priority risks. The fourth step is then treatment. Having identified the risk, what are you going to do to make sure that that risk doesn't materialize? If it materializes, the impact on your business will not be significant. That's how you treat the identified risks. And of course, you have to continue to monitor because, first of all, you want to make sure that the treatment you're giving the risk is actually yielding the right results. So you have to monitor to see how those treatments is actually impacting the risk. And in fact, if I quote a one-time German Army general, who said that every plan, every war plan, that in fact he said, if I quote him correctly, no war plan survives contact with the enemy. So if I bring that to the world of risk, you after having defined the treatment, the moment that treatment comes in contact with the reality of the risk itself, you might find that you have to tweak it. And the way you design that treatment initially might not be sufficient to address that particular risk. So you have to treat it and tweak it. I can do that because I'm monitoring to see how the treatment is addressing that particular risk. And beyond that, also the monitoring is important because you might have certain set of risks today, and there could be new ones tomorrow. So if you don't monitor continuously, you may not be able to identify when new risks, that affect your business have come into play. And by the way, the risks can be either internal or external. So you monitor internally as well as externally. I don't know how many of us will remember several years ago when NLNG was shut down by NIMASA from being able to transport cargo out of Nigeria to meet its contractual obligation. NLNG was monitoring its internal risks, diligently. They had no idea that the government regulator could shut it down, So that's why it's important that as much as you pay attention to the internal risks, you must also keep your eyes out there to know what's happening externally and what impact those external factors can have on your business, and making sure that you have steps to help you mitigate the impact of the external risks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyemba. It's as if I'm in class, receiving that lecture, preparing for exam. We're just taking it one after the other. Lanre actually asked a question, one of our viewers, and he's asking that what risk are we associating with Nigeria borrowing funds and not minding the future generation? What risk? Which risk can we identify that to?
Okay, if I were to try to put it into my set of risks, there are several risks that will come with that particular action. The first, obviously, is liquidity risk. The risk that at the time you need to pay back these funds, you don't have the resources to do so. And if you can't pay the risk, there are issues around default, etc. And those issues will then have knock-on effects, because if you don't meet the obligations as and when they become due, become a credit risk, and that will impact investors coming to your country to make investments, and potentially will have long-term effects on your economy. So really, the risk of borrowing money and not being diligent in terms of how you're going to be able to repay the money when they fall due for repayment, is multifaceted, and it's a risk that we should actually pay a lot of attention to as a country.
Is a risk that we should pay serious attention to because it's multifaceted in level. Permit me to take you back a bit. I mentioned the other time that you just mentioned one risk that I'm hearing on ICAN on air, and that is the major reason while we bring this question, this program together. You mentioned something like a talent risk, and given that this appear to be a major risk facing this country currently and the Nigerian enterprise on itself, can you give an opinion on what an organization or organizations should do to mitigate the menace of this risk? I mean, the talent risk.
So if I had the answer to that question, I'd be a millionaire.
Maybe I'm trying to make you one this evening, sir.
But let me, first, I think it's important that we properly understand the implications of that risk. And I would like to explain that using our profession as an example. So, accounting firms, right? What we are finding is that people qualify, they become chartered, and almost the very next day, they are emigrating to Canada, to the UK, to the US, and to all other parts of the world. In fact, recently, a friend of mine came to me and said, well, not a friend, a mentee. I mean, he's a friend. Came to me and said he has an offer. I said, okay, where at this time? Is it is it Canada or UK? He said no, it's Poland. I said Poland too. Poland too. How can you be going to Poland? But it's real, and I think the risks that we run with that is one, you don't have the resources in terms of experience and qualification to do the work. The second is I don't have that resource in the right quantity. And as a business, as accountants, if I may stay with who we are, you then run the risk of not being able to serve your clients properly. Because if you go and do an audit work, for instance, I haven't got the right skills on the audit, chances are going to make errors on the audit. And then, you can imagine what would then happen to you as a firm if they then find out that the quality of the audit that you are providing to, to clients is very poor. In fact, you run the risk of your license being withdrawn. So it's a major risk. Solution, unfortunately, it's one of those risks that the driver is beyond all of us in terms of, part of the reason why our young people are leaving to go abroad is because of, the macro issues. They think that their circumstances would be better served if they were in the UK, for instance, and if they were to remain in Nigeria. So it's macro. Unless the macroeconomic environment changes, we may not be able to reverse that trend. But having said that, you can't fold your hands and say, I can't do anything about these risks. I'm just going to lie down and die. So you have to do things. What kind of things? One of the things that we have done as a firm in Nigeria is in recruiting heavily at the bottom. Yeah, maybe you used to recruit just 10 people in a year. This is time to look at bringing in 20, maybe 25, maybe 30. The idea here, being that if you have 30 and 10 of them leave, you probably still got 20 sometime in the future. Whereas if you have 10 and the whole 10 leave, you have nobody in the place. So you have to over-recruit at the bottom, and not just in 1 year, but every year. You actually need 10 people at the bottom, but you bring in 20 because they are thinking of the future. So that's one way firms are looking to address the issue. The second way, because these guys are recruiting today, they still have to be trained, and it takes some time to come up to speed in terms of quality and experience. They have a need today because some people have left you today to go to Canada, and you have clients that have to serve today. Now, how that's been handled, I have to tell you, Sheson, is that people are just going to other firms and trying to bring people in. And you're bringing, that is happening from a shrinking pool of resources. Because people have left you, they've also left that other firm, and they are going there to say, out of the two that are left there,
let me take one.
Can I take one? In fact, can I take the two of them if it's possible? And the way it's being done also poses a risk, because sometimes you go to somebody who is maybe a three-year accountant, and you say to him, I want you to join me. And his answer is, why should I join you as a 3-year accountant? That's what I'm here as anyway. So you have to bring me across as a 5-year experienced accountant and pay me the money of an experienced accountant. But he or she hasn't got the skills to be able to operate at that level. Because you are desperate, it's okay, come on, come as a 5-year experienced accountant. So that in itself is also a risk. Again, one of the things that we're looking to do is to look at people who are abroad, because sometimes when you haven't gone abroad, you think once you get there, all your problems are solved.
So you want to be repatriating them.
The moment they come out of Heathrow, there'll be money to pick on the streets. But when you have been there for a couple of years, you realize that actually maybe I'm better off in Nigeria than I am in the UK. And so also reaching out to people like that and saying, might you be interested in coming back? Having gone there, seen it, done that. And then being able to interest them. Again, it comes down to what are you offering them in return. Being able to interest them to consider returning back to Nigeria. Of course, the other way which most firms have to begin to think about now and to do so seriously is to say, maybe the way the world is going, I don't need all my results to be based in Nigeria. So maybe they want to live in Canada, but is it possible for me to get them to work for me from Canada? Because all I really want them to do is to provide the results. And as we found out through the lockdown that COVID-19 occasioned, what can be done from anywhere. And I think that's an area that is beginning to get more and more attention. Of course, there are risks to be considered as usual. So there's a risk of, for instance, if your staff is working from Canada, the personal tax obligations, who is responsible for it? Is it you based in Nigeria, or is it him, who is over there in Canada? So all those sorts of things have to be taken into account and consideration. But that is beginning to look at like a very viable option in terms of being able to meet the resource gap that is happening as a consequence of the JAPA syndrome.
You just said that the question is to provide to make you a billionaire. I can tell you for free that I think after doing justice to that question, you are not just a billionaire. I'm seeing you as a trillionaire that will hand over the budget of the country to very soon, so that we can come to you to borrow. Very excellent delivery, Mr. Onyepa. Let me take Jimo Olamilekan's question. It's been on screen, and he's appreciating, this insightful discussion on risk management. But he's asking that can you shed more light on the two tools of risk management, that is loss incidents reporting, LIR, and risk and control self-assessment, LC, as effective tool in risk management.
Well, so those are if you like, the steps you have to take as a professional. If I just stay with the incident reporting, what are the things, because the thing about our institute, our profession, as an example, is that we are regulated. So if you fall foul of some of the requirements you're supposed to keep to, there are consequences. And if you look at how regulators have operated, especially globally, especially in more advanced countries, if you do self-reporting, they look at you more leniently, and they tend to believe you more when you say, oh, it was a control failure. We have now identified the control, and we're taking steps to fix it. Compared to where something happens, you try to hide it, they then find it out themselves, and they not only find that this has happened, they also find out that actually you've taken steps to try to hide it. They tend to come real hard on you. I don't know if any of us saw the recent story about the chief security officer of OBA, who they eventually was convicted of trying to cover up malfeasance that took place, within Uber, and beyond the company, being sanctioned, he, as an individual, was found guilty and received a penalty as an individual. So that's how big regulators take the issue of self-reporting, and whether companies come forward when they discover that things haven't worked properly, versus trying to hide things, and then the regulators having to find those things out. So it's real. The issues are real, and that's also why it's very important that every company has the right risk management structure in place, and that you don't. And by the way, and I'm hoping we'll come to a point where I will take us through how you determine the kind of risks to focus on as an organization. What we typically call the risk heat map, how that is developed, and then that helps you then know where to put all the effort in. But the point is, risk is so crucial now to every business, risk management, that is. And if you don't have the right structures in place to manage those risks, including reporting those risks. So for instance, you have policies to say, this is how we're going to do things in our organization. But if you don't have whistleblowing, structure in place to say, if anybody is not following our policies, here are the steps to take to report it. If you don't have that in place, then you haven't quite finished, the work you need to do around your risk management processes.
Very wonderful submission, and I want to believe that our viewer are seriously benefited from that explanation. I want to appreciate everybody, and let your question keeps coming in. But before I go to Olubanji's question, I have this question for you, sir. I remember in financial management, we often associate risk with returns in project evaluation. Can you please, using your knowledge and your risk management expertise, speak to this phenomenon?
Okay, well, what that typically means, and that's also a very important point I'll be making in a moment around this whole question of risk management. What that means is that the more the risk you take, the more the reward you expect to get from the risk. As a simple example, if there's a bank that is overflowing with investment, everybody has their money in the bank, and the bank is then able to give out this money as loans to customers, etc. I go to the bank and say, I want to deposit my money in your bank. They'll probably offer you bottom rates because they don't need their money. They have more than enough for their own to do stuff with. On the other hand, as another bank that customers are asking for loan from, and they haven't got the resources to do that loan, that bank is likely to offer you a bigger interest rate to have you put your money with them than the other bank that is well resourced. But of course, if one or two or three of the loans of the well-resourced bank was to go bad, it's okay. It has sufficient base to be able to cover that loss and still return money to those that are invested in it, compared to this other bank that paid this higher amounts to get the loan. So the risk is higher that you might lose your money with this bank that's paying you a higher interest rate. And if you know what you are doing, you should actually be asking for really more higher interest rate from that kind of bank than from the more solid bank. But bringing that back to the world of risk. So what I just did here was from the classical risk and reward consideration. But when we say risk management, I think it's important that we understand that the idea here is not that you can run a business without any risk. That's not possible. The world is such that you run risks naturally. Coming to work every day is a risk that you might be knocked over by a car. or if you are driving a car, another car can just run into you and push you
run
out.
into you.
Yeah, and push into the lagoon, not just running into you. So it's important to first understand what the risk is, and then to say a number of things. Can I mitigate this risk? Because if you can't, you shouldn't take that risk on. Can I mitigate it? And the answer is yes, to say, well, okay, I can mitigate it. However, I'm taking a risk doing this thing. I have to be paid for it. So being able to charge the appropriate price for the risk you're taking, right? If you don't have a process of determining that this is a riskier project than the other one, you probably just go there and charge the same amount of money, not knowing that whereas you can do this job, earn the money, and go home and sleep properly, the other one could potentially expose you to a risk that you have to end up paying 4 times what you got as professional fees on the engagement. So it's important that you properly understand, properly dimension the risk of every project you're going to get into, and properly price that risk into your fees as a profession. Because if you're taking a risk, you should be rewarded for it.
Very wonderful submission. And I have Dr. Abel saying all the way from Abuja asking this question that as accountant, we are very futuristic. As we look forward to 2023, what should we be telling our clients and employer who are skeptical about investing more funds in Nigeria today and even tomorrow?
Well, I think it comes down to the risk appetites of the individual. Like you read out when you were going through my CV, my industry, the industry I specialize in is the energy and natural resources industry. And I remember several years ago when the PIB was just, the petroleum industry bill was looking like a trend that had left the station and was lost somewhere on the way. And many operators in the sector were reluctant to invest. The particular operator, took an FID, invested in in developing a new field in Nigeria, and then today is reaping the rewards of that investment. And the reason, clearly the reasons, if I may, one, obviously, that company had a bigger risk appetite than the others who said we're not going to do anything. We're just going to wait until this whole matter is sorted.
You sorted out.
But beyond that, is also they did their homework and realized that, hang on a minute, we've gone through these sorts of things in Nigeria before, and ultimately, come out okay. Therefore, even though it looks all dark just now, we believe that things are going to come out okay. And by the way, the petroleum industry ad has come out now is much, I believe, is much better than what people were expecting. From that perspective, if you have a client who is reluctant to, who is very risk averse, I mean, clearly, in fact, if you tell him to invest money in Nigeria, he will look at you and say, "You're giving me very bad advice," right? You're not a good professional. You're giving me very bad advice.
You're not a professional.
Not a professional, in fact. So you have to understand your client first and foremost, and to say, okay, well, yeah, it is what it is. So if you want to kind of hold on, on further investments until things settle down, I mean, you'll be welcome to do it. The other way to then also look at the question, would be to say, where are we today? Who are the people running for office in 2023? Do we see a potential that no matter which of them wins, that we see a potential for upside? And based on that, we say, maybe it can't be any worse off in 2023 than you are at this point in time. And if you are here still, then it can't get any worse in 2023. And therefore, you can take those bets. But of course, it depends, like I said, that the risk appetite of the firm or the individual or the company that you are speaking to.
You must understand your client very well, your employer, and those that you are actually talking to. Do they have the risk appetite, or they are risk averse to know the kind of advice you give to them as professional? Sincerely speaking, we've been having it good with our guest today. I'm going to combine the question of Fagbola with that which I have here, who is asking what are the risk averting mechanism to guide against crippling the economy of Nigeria with excessive borrowing for sustainability. And I want to combine it with this, my question, saying that you are a risk guru. There are practical risks that is confronting the nation as we speak. How do we manage it from your professional view or control it? I would say eliminate, but I know that risk cannot be eliminated because eliminating the risk is risk on its own. How do you do justice to these questions?
I'm going to try. I think that's a very tough question. So I'm going to just try, and I believe that if we were to go around, the room of audience and ask people to give you their views, we're going to have as many views as people that are listening in on this program. So in my view, we have to start with leadership, because that really drives a lot of what can happen. If you have a leader who understands what the issues are and can then bring professionals to help him design the solution, I think that'd be the first step we need to take as a country. You have to get the leadership right. The second is that we have to understand that given where we are as a country, we're going to have to take real hard, tough decisions to move forward. The world at this point in time, maybe things will change in future. But the Western world, who, by the way, are those that are giving us most of the debt that we have now, they're not interested in debt forgiveness. I know African countries are asking, and it's okay to ask, but their body posture does not suggest that they're willing to do any debt forgiveness.
To forgive.
At best, maybe you go and borrow from IMF and then use to pay down some of your other foreign debts. But not a lot of those people are discussing debt forgiveness. And especially when they look at you and some of the the policies you have as a country, and they think you guys are not serious about solving your problem, and, then they tend to be even less inclined to do debt forgiveness. And so we as a people also have to understand that to come out of where we are, there'll be tough moments ahead, and we must be willing to go through those tough moments. I was pleased listening to one of the presidential candidates speaking the other day, and he said, my job is not to make you guys happy. My job is to make sure that we do the right thing that will help us solve our problems. If you want to make us happy, you are going to keep subsidy, for instance. And we would buy petrol for free almost, but somebody has to pay for it, and so we go and borrow money to pay for the subsidy. And this money we could have used to do our roads, so that I said at the beginning that when you drive to Ibadan, you're going to see potholes and stuff. But if I use that money to do the roads, it would have been a smoother road. It would have had less risk to deal with driving from Lagos to Ibadan. So everything has a price, because our money is finite, right? So if you spend it, the more you spend in a particular area, the less you have to spend in another area. So what's important to us as a country? We have to define it. And even if you are borrowing, to then borrow money and put that money in the right places, not just make people happy.
Leadership is very fundamental. And when you go borrow and make sure that those funds are channeled to the right place. Let me take a next question, which is very germane to we professional accountant. He said in these times of Internet of Things, some software are already doing the work of accountant in most organizations, at least the basic one, like we've heard on this program from some of our guests. He is asking, what is the risk for the future and prospective accountant in the light of digitalization of machine work?
There's a book I recommend that he read. It's a book titled The Future of the Professions. It's written by a father and son. I think their name is Richard and David Susskind. but just Google the book. It's called The Future of the Professions. And what that book essentially says is that in the future, AI as artificial intelligence will take over the professions. And so bear in mind that up to this point in time, there has been this belief by we professionals that, professional services are very personal. Accounting, for instance, is very personal. Law is very personal. Medicine is very personal. That, you need an individual, you need a human to do it. But what that book was saying to us is that that's not true, actually. Because all that will happen is that if you put sufficient information into the machine, into the artificial intelligence, it will have much more experience, as it were, than any individual. As an example, assume you are a doctor treating patients, right? And patients have come to you and they said, I woke up in the morning and my left eye was just blinking, uncontrollably. And you said, okay, go and take aspirin, just one aspirin. And the first patient took it and the eye stopped blinking. So hurrah, aspirin has solved the problem. Second patient comes and says, the other day, I woke up in the morning, my left eye was blinking uncontrollably and I just can't stop. And you say, take an aspirin. The patient takes aspirin, the eye starts blinking. So for you are now experienced in curing people that wake up in the morning and their left eye is blinking uncontrollably. So you are good. 90 patients come to you with the same complaint, solution works. The 91st patient walks in, same complaint, you recommend aspirin, it doesn't cure it. But that experience is out the window because you've never had to deal with someone who had that symptom but did not react to the treatment. So that you have treated 90 patients that you have cured successfully become irrelevant. But a machine would know that, yeah, aspirin cured 1 million people of this treatment, but there were 5 out of the 1 million that it did not cure. It knows it already. The moment you come and it doesn't cure you aspirin, it knows what else to do. When you're the doctor who is experienced, in today's world, you are lost at that point in time. So the truth of the matter is that indeed our professions are at risk. All these professions, accounting, law,
medicine,
etc., they are at risk. And I will encourage all of us to actually read this book I just spoke about now. I think this, the father and son are obviously both. They are British, and I found that book extremely revealing. But the good thing, if I may, is that I don't see it happening anytime soon. So we are safe.
At least that avert the risk in a very minimal way. Mr. Victor,
but going forward, if I may, but going forward, I think we have to be very, very conscious of the fact that the way we provide services today as accounting professionals will be very different from how it's going to be done in 10 years from now, as an example.
That is very much correct, sir. Time is not always our friend because I can see from the feelers of our audience, viewers, there are questions. But in 1 minute, I want to take this question because it's related to our institute, and I will not leave. I will not allow you to go until you do justice to this, and that will be our closing shot. ICAN is always open to ideas that will positively advance the growth of our members, the accounting profession, and the Nigerian business environment. What would be your general advice or suggestion to the Institute and our members regarding further supporting Nigerian investors and government in area of risk management, mitigation, and control? You help me do justice to that in a minute.
Yes, I think as professionals in the industry, we have to be emphasizing to the companies that we work for the importance of risk management. I did give us a quote about a business being risky if if it doesn't have a risk management system in place. It has to be at the company level, but also at the national level. We have to have a risk management mindset. Um, Again, there's another quote I like to refer us to if we have time, and it's by a guy called Lee Iacocca. He was very involved in Ford Motors. So if you're interested, just look him up. And what he says, with respect to the decision, but I'm bringing it now to the decision around risk. He says, even a correct decision is wrong if it's taken too late. So beyond um, focusing on risk management, we should also take mitigating steps at the right time. That is correct at the company level. It's also correct at the national level. And as professionals, we, the accountants, need to be pushing that and making sure that in whatever we are doing as companies and as a nation, that we're actually dimensioning all the risks that could potentially come out of that and making sure that we have mitigations in place to address and mitigate those risks.
Sincerely speaking, that is a very brilliant way to bring the show to an end today. And our guest, Mr. Victor Onyekpa, FCA, has advised our viewers today, which is another takeoff, to go check out the book, The Future of the Profession, by the daddy and son from the Britain. Thank you very much for sharing your evening with us on ICAN on Air, Mr. Victor Onyekpa. We sincerely appreciate it. And we believe when next we call, you'll definitely yield the time to do justice and educate our members. On that note, we'll be rounding up the program, but let me quickly share with us few announcements that is coming from our institute. Let us encourage ourselves that the World Congress of Accountants is holding next month in Mumbai, India, from November 18 to 21st, November 2022. You and I understand the strategic role that ICAN plays in IFAC, our body. The topic of discussion is is talking about sustainability. So I want to encourage us that we hook on to our website, check those details that we have there, contact the people on the chat, do the necessary thing that is expected. Is a time for you to network, a time for you to enrich your knowledge globally, and will definitely be on for it. Let me also state that the fellowship conferment, the portal is open. We can, those of us that are due, can start enrolling for the fellowship conferment. And in no distance time too, we should be having our induction. On this note, I'm rounding up the program to connect with you again on Thursday with another brilliant topic and another scintillating guest that will do justice to it. On that note, I remain your host for today, Olusegun Okunade, FCA. Till Thursday, bye for now.